in the United States. What I discovered was a puzzling system called PACER, which stands for Public Access to Court Electronic Records. I started Googling, and that's when I ran across Carl Malamuth.
Access to legal materials in the United States is a $10 billion per year business.
PACER is just this incredible abomination of government service. It's 10 cents a page. It's this most brain-dead code you've ever seen. You can't search it. You can't bookmark anything. You got to have a credit card. And these are public records. It's U.S. district courts are very important. It's where a lot of our seminal litigation starts. Civil rights cases, patent cases, all sorts of stuff. And journalists and students and citizens and lawyers all need access to PACER, and it fights them every step of the way. People without means can't see the law as readily as people that have that gold American Express card. It's a poll tax on access to justice.
The law is the operating system of our democracy, and you have to pay to see it. That's not much of a democracy. They make about $120 million a year on the PACER system, and it doesn't cost anything near that, according to their own records. In fact, it's illegal. The E-Government Act of 2002 states that the courts may charge only to the extent necessary in order to reimburse the costs of running PACER.
As the founder of public.resource.org, Malamuth wanted to protest the PACER charges. He started a program called the PACER Recycling Project, where people could upload PACER documents they had already paid for to a free database so others could use them.
The PACER people were getting a lot of flack from Congress and others about public access. And so they put together this system. In 17 libraries across the country, there was free PACER access. That's one library every 22,000 square miles, I believe. So it wasn't like really convenient.
I encourage volunteers to join the so-called thumb drive corps and download docs from the public access libraries, upload them to the PACER recycling system.
People take a thumb drive into one of these libraries and they download a bunch of documents and they send them to me. It was just a joke. In fact, when you clicked on thumb drive core, there was a Wizard of Oz, the Munchkin singing. So the video came up. But of course, I get this phone call from Steve Schwartz and saying, "Gee, we'd like to join the thumb drive corps."
I ran into Aaron at a conference.
This is something that really has to be a collaboration between a lot of different people.
So I approached him and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about an intervention on the PACER problem."
Schwartz had already developed a program that could automatically download PACER documents from the trial libraries. Schwartz wanted to take a look.
So I showed him the code, and I didn't know what would come next, but as it turns out, over the course of the next few hours at that conference, he was off sitting in a corner, improving my code, recruiting a friend of his that lived near one of these libraries to go into the library and to begin to test his improved code, at which point the folks at the court realized something's not going quite according to plan.
Data started to come in, and come in, and come in, and soon there were 760 gigabytes of PACER docs, about 20 million pages.
Using information retrieved from the trial libraries, Schwartz was conducting massive, automated parallel downloading of the PACER system. He was able to acquire nearly 2.7 million federal court documents, almost 20 million pages of text.
Now, I'll grant you that 20 million pages had perhaps exceeded the expectations of the people running the pilot access project, but surprising a bureaucrat isn't illegal.
Aaron and Carl decided to go talk to the New York Times about what happened.
They also caught the attention of the FBI, who began to stake out Schwartz's parents' house in Illinois.
But I get a tweet from his mother saying, "Call me." It's like, oh my God, what the hell's going on here? And so I finally got a hold of Aaron, and Aaron's mother was like, "Oh my God, FBI, FBI, FBI."
An FBI agent drives down our home's driveway trying to see if Aaron is in his room. And I remember being home that day and wondering why this car was driving down our driveway and just driving back out.
hands are dripping with sweat, faced with the knowledge that if they dare to stop, they won't be able to put food on the table that night, while I get to make larger and larger amounts of money each day just by sitting and watching TV. But apparently the world is ridiculous.
So I co-founded a group called the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and what we try and do is we try and organize people over the internet who care about progressive politics and moving the country in a more progressive direction to kind of come together, join our email list, join our campaigns, and help get progressive candidates elected all across the country.
The group is responsible for igniting the grassroots effort behind the campaign to elect Elizabeth Warren to the Senate.
He might have thought it was a dumb system, but he came in and he said, I need to learn this system because it can be manipulated like any social system.
But his passion for knowledge in libraries didn't take a back seat. Aaron began to take a closer look at institutions that publish academic journal articles.
By virtue of being students at a major U.S. university, I assume that you have access to a wide variety of scholarly journals. Pretty much every major university in the United States pays these sort of licensing fees to organizations like JSTOR and Thomson and ISI to get access to scholarly journals that the rest of the world can't.
These scholarly journals and articles are essentially the entire wealth of human knowledge online, and many have been paid for with taxpayer money or with government grants. But to read them, you often have to pay it again, handing over steep fees to publishers like Reed Elsevier.
These licensing fees are so substantial that people who are studying in India instead of studying in the United States don't have this kind of access. They're locked out from all of these journals. They're locked out from our entire scientific legacy. I mean, a lot of these journal articles, they go back to the Enlightenment. Every time someone has written down a scientific paper, it's been scanned, digitized, and put in these collections. That is a legacy that has been brought to us by the history of people doing interesting work, the history of scientists. It's a legacy that should belong to us as a commons, as a people, but instead it's been locked up and put online by a handful of for-profit corporations who then try and get the maximum profit they can out of it.
So a researcher paid by the university or the people publishes a paper, and in the very, very last step of that process, after all the work is done, after all the original research is done, the thinking, the lab work, the analysis, after everything is done at that last stage, then the researcher has to hand over his or her copyright to this multi-billion-dollar company. And it's sick. It's an entire economy built on volunteer labor. And then the publishers sit at the very top and scrape up the cream.
Talk about a scam. One publisher in Britain made a profit of $3 billion last year. I mean, what a racket.
JSTOR is just a very, very small player in that story, but for some reason JSTOR is the player that Aaron decided to confront.
We'd gone to some conference around open access and open publishing, and I don't know who the person from JSTOR was, but I think they, at some point Aaron asked the question, like, how much would it cost to open up JSTOR in perpetuity? They gave some, I think